Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining, guys. As promised, we have Mr. Basu and Mr. Dr. Tuhin with us. I've been your moderator. In the interest of time and to avoid everybody um, uh, you know disturbances in between, I have muted you all. What you can do is, if you have any questions, feel free to just put it in the chat, and we'll answer. We'll have the team, Mr. Basu and Dr. Tuhin, answering those questions and at the end of the session. Okay. So quickly introduce you, I'll hand it over to Dr. Tuhin. Dr. Tuhin has over 20 years of experience, a very well awarded data scientist as well as a CTO. So Tuhinji, if you could just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Sure. The first 10 years of my career was into academics. I used to teach the subjects like business statistics, business research, marketing analytics in the leading business schools of the country. Of course, of late, I started teaching artificial intelligence as well. After 10 years of my career into academics, I moved to industry and worked with multiple leading countries and companies, including SC Nielsen, and then started my own business and consultants in the space of analytics and AI. So that's briefly my journey all about.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Tuhin. So quickly to the next slide, we'll have Mr. Basu introduce himself. Mr. Basu, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep. Hello, good morning. Sorry, good afternoon to everyone. I was in India. So, yep. I am a solutions architect with CVS Health, which is one of the major healthcare companies in India. Like, we specialize in retail pharmacy, pharmacy benefit manager, and specialty pharmacy. And also, of course, we have a huge retail chain here. So I mostly work as a solutions architect in the digital transformation IT strategy space. Most of my time, like, I like to call myself an engineer, so I like to build things. I work in emerging architectures and modernizing our legacy workforce. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Basu. About myself, I have spent a couple of decades in the industry across various domains. Last 5 years, I've been working in the emerging technologies. Primarily, I spent a lot of time doing process excellence. So now, I'm around 5 years back, I moved into finding technology solutions to those issues or problems which you're facing in the industry, which used to come out of the process excellence. A couple of times was awarded for my black belt projects from ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, as well as the Quality Council of India. Currently, I spend a lot of time in Riyadh working across intelligent process automation, your RPA, as well as machine learning, artificial intelligence. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining. So Tuhinji, you can take it forward from here.
Thanks so much, Sudhakar, for your kind introduction, and thanks, Devadipta, for joining as a digital pharma expert. And I must thank all the participants here in this evening to join here and be an avid listener to us amidst the lockdown. I understand that it's challenging times, and I'm very happy that you found some time out of this challenging times and joining our webinar. So the storyline is as follows. We will discuss the Industry 4.0, the digital transformation in the pharmaceutical industry first. Then we'll do some kind of basic introduction about analytics and AI, as many of the participants might not be from the analytics and AI field. Then we'll move to the core part of the seminar or the webinar is about the analytics and AI in pharmaceutical industry. And finally, we'll look at the future trends and the impact. So let's set the context first with Industry 4.0, what this stuff is. We all know that how industry or the first industrial revolution started in 18th century with the invention of steam power, which helps in mechanical production, moving away from cottage industry. The second industrial revolution was in the 19th century with the invention of electricity, which helped in mass production and assembly line. And many of us witnessed the third industrial revolution in the mid-20th century when ICTs and electronics came into existence, and which helped in automated and network production. This is the time of this an era for the fourth industrial revolution, where we are finding many of the cutting edge solutions, cutting edge technologies, which helps in intelligent, flexible, and distributed production. It even produces, the technology produces at the customer's end. So maybe when we'll discuss the AI, we'll discuss that part. The latest advancement of the AI is the say edge AI, where the entire AI, artificial intelligence, takes place at the client's place. So it's not about the production is distributed, even the deployment is also distributed. That's where we are currently. So the key technologies that are transforming the industrial production currently are the autonomous robots, simulation, horizontal and vertical system integration, the industrial Internet of Things, which includes the different sensors, from where we get the data. So the edge technology or the edge AI that I was discussing is related with that. Even when the sensor collects the data from the different machines, we apply our analytics and AI at that part. There is cybersecurity, the cloud, additive manufacturing, augmented reality, big data analytics. So all of them taken together give a completely different edge to the organizations who apply it and give them a competitive advantage. Now coming to the pharmaceutical industry part, yes, all these technologies that I mentioned in my previous slide, they do leave a significant impact, which gets manifested in the drug discovery, clinical trials, manufacturing, regulatory, commercial, and operations. We will dive deep into each of them in my subsequent slides when I shall discuss on the pharmaceutical industry, but this is just a kind of snapshot of how it leaves an impact. Now, the fundamentals of analytics and AI, we are going to start. As I mentioned that many of the participants might not have a background in analytics and AI. It would be beneficial for them to understand the basics to better appreciate the analytics and AI in pharmaceutical industry. So it starts with the basic business intelligence reports that where the degree of complexity is also less and the business value is relatively less than the analytics. So it answers the questions like what happened, like how many cells happened at geography level, at the salesperson's level. It moves to the ad hoc reports, the query drill down, like OLAPs, and what exactly is the problem, what actions are needed. Those are the kind of alerts that we use to generate in the business intelligence part. And if we look at the evolution, then it moves to that next level of business analytics, where it's about the statistical analysis, like why is this happening, and the forecasting part, like what if these trends continue, the predictive modeling, like what will happen next, and optimization, that's what's the best can happen given certain constraints. So that's where the evolution is heading towards, and we have covered most of them with significant impact. Now, within analytics, there are three basic layers that starts with the descriptive analytics. That means from the data, we are not doing any kind of prediction. We are just explaining what is there in the market. It starts with what happened, how many, how often, where exactly is the problem. Those kind of questions we answer through descriptive analytics. Then comes the predictive analytics part, what actions are needed in the future, what could happen, what if these trends continue, what will happen next. And in the prescriptive part, we move to the how can we achieve the best outcome, like how can we achieve the best outcome, including the effects of variability, where the constraints come, multiple constraints come, and we come out with the best maximization solution or the minimization solution with the stochastic optimization. Yeah. Now, the different types of machine learning, what we will briefly discuss, and then we will, in the subsequent slide, we will move to see that how these machine learning techniques are being leveraged in the pharmaceutical industry. So typically, machine learning has got, say, three dimensions like supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. Supervised learning starts with the classification and regression techniques. Classification techniques are primarily been used for the for identifying the fraud detection, image classification, customer retention, diagnostics. Regression is being used for the population growth prediction, estimating life expectancy, market forecasting, weather forecasting, advertising popularity prediction. The unsupervised learning has got precisely two ways to take it forward. First one is the clustering, which includes the recommender systems, targeted marketing, customer segmentation. And the dimensional reduction starts with big data visualization, meaningful computation, structure discovery, feature elicitation. And reinforcement learning, generally it happens when there is a kind of positive or negative reinforcement has been given to the machine so that the right actions been taken, especially, for instance, whenever you have got the driverless cars, for instance. So, or continuously there is reinforcement about the positive and negative stimulus to make the things happen. So these are the three dimensions, and then we move to the core part. The core part of this presentation is about the analytics and AI in pharmaceutical industry. So these three techniques that I mentioned to you, or I discussed in my previous slide, is about the supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. So how do they manifest and how do they help in the pharmaceutical industry? You can see here, like supervised learning, which has got classification and regression, helps in the disease diagnosis in the classification part, that whether it is different types of, say, heart diseases are there. So what exactly is the kind of heart disease, helps in classifying. Or in the regression, the prediction part of ADMET. ADMET stands for whenever a drug is been given. So how quickly the drug gets absorbed, how quickly it is been digested, metabolized, excreted, and the toxicity of the drug, that can also be predicted. And that's a very significant part in pharmaceutical industry, because the success of any drug determines to a large extent, in the sense of almost 60% for the ADMET prediction. So that's about the impact of the supervised learning in the drug disease diagnosis and the drug efficacy and ADMET prediction. In the unsupervised learning, we have like clustering, where in the clustering, what we do, we generally take the homogeneous groups together, in the sense that within the groups there will be homogeneity, and across the groups there is heterogeneity. That means within a group, things should be as close as possible, whereas in the across the groups or across the clusters, the distance should be as hard as possible. So the disease subtype discovery. So within a particular disease, there are multiple subtypes. We create the clusters of those subtypes and see that within those clusters, the distances are minimum, whereas across the subtypes, the distances are maximum. So that's a kind of optimization technique being leveraged through clustering. And then there is feature finding, or what we discussed in our previous slide is about the dimension reduction. So that's what we do with the feature finding when the disease target discovery is done. So there are multiple dimensions that get manifested for any disease, but then we figure out the key diseases by ensuring that the similar diseases and we combine together. So that's the feature finding part. Reinforcement learning gets manifested to the drug designing. As I mentioned, is about giving a positive or negative reinforcement for the effectiveness of a drug. And the execution is about the experimental design, that which particular experimental design gives the success, we generally go ahead with that. So that's the different distributions of the machine learning. In the healthcare, it has the manifestation, or it has the applications in the research, wearables, drug discovery, virtual assistant, patient data and risk analysis, hospital management, mental health, surgery, lifestyle, digital health monitoring, and diagnostics. Deep learning primarily takes place when we do the image analysis. For example, we can classify from the different kind of medical images. It can be MRIs or the different kind of images. We classify and figure out that where exactly is the problem, or we classify across the disease from the image itself. So that's the different applications of the artificial intelligence, deep learning, and machine learning techniques in the pharmaceutical industry. Now we will dive deep into the specific problems. The first thing is the accelerating the drug discovery and development. The first application is the drug discovery and development, in the sense that it starts with the data mining. The data mining goes with patent, scientific publications, and clinical trials. Data accelerate the discovery of new drugs. So with the data mining, we understand the pathway of finding the molecular target, which helps us in drug discovery. Then comes the predictive analytics part, which avenues search parameters will yield the best results. It predicts the mode of action or the modus operandi of compound polypharmacology, which helps in the drug trials. And what is the outcome of that? We figure out that we recognize the disease in the patients. We figure out precisely what's the disease in the patient through this kind of data mining and predictive analytics. We identify the gene targets, we predict the effect of the molecule design and on and off effects. So the beauty is that this kind of drugs, as we have seen and we will discuss in the subsequent slides, that this kind of techniques helps in designing the drugs that gets approval from the FDA as well. And the drug repurposing helps in, again, the drug trials, and that's how the cycle of the development goes on. So this is the use case of the drug discovery and development that I just discussed. The AI platform feeds data from the research papers, patents, clinical trials, and the patient records. It gets stored in the cloud with where more than 1 billion known and inferred relationships between the biological entities such as genes, symptoms, disease, proteins, tissues, species, and candidate drugs are being explored. The search engine generates the knowledge graphs of medical condition and the genes that are associated with it, the compounds that have been shown to affect it. There is natural language processing on the top of it to recognize non-annotated entities and understand the links to other things. And finally, there is artificial intelligence that analyzes the data in context and surface the most salient information for drug discovery scientists. So what are the challenges of this pharmaceutical company that was given to them? The biggest problem, or the business problem that was given to him, was to suggest new ways to treat amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And by dint of this AI platform, cloud, and NLP, they flagged around 100 existing compounds as having potential, and out of that, 5 shortlisted by the scientists. So this is typically what we call IA, or the intelligence automation or augmentation, where not only we leave completely complete the entire findings is not been completely left to AI only. So there is human interference who helps in augmenting the existing intelligence. And finally, we have the outcome or the laboratory study where 4 of these compounds of the 5 that have been found, one was shown to delay the neurological symptoms in mice. So that's the beauty, and that's a great achievement we can see from this with the help of this AI platform, cloud, NLP, where multiple technologies have been used, and how swiftly, smoothly, without much of an error, 4 of the compounds, and almost 5, we can say 4 plus 1, have been found to treat a new way. The next part is about optimizing and improving the efficacy of clinical trials. So the key challenges for any clinical trial is that they are costly and time-consuming to run. So the right mix of patients for a given trial is again another challenge. The big data solution comes here to identify the appropriate patients to participate in a trial, monitor patients remotely, reviewing previous clinical trial events, reviewing in the sense analyzing the data, identify potential side effects before they become a reality, and they identify niche patient populations to speed up and reduce costs of trial by analyzing patient genetic information. So that's how the journey of clinical trials becomes seamless with the help of these big data solutions. This is a global pharmaceutical company use case that we have seen. The key challenge for that pharmaceutical company was to figure out the country footprint optimization and site selection that impacts the trial speed, cost, and quality. So first of all, explanatory models to identify the drivers of past performance was identified. So what does that mean? It means that it's the kind of driver analysis for any particular phenomena. We have got multiple reasons or causes. So what's the exact impact of each of these drivers? That's been figured out first. So here, operations or the performance of the company was the dependent variable, and we have got multiple factors that leave an impact on the dependent variable. So we figured out what's the exact impact of that. And the next stage of analytics, we move to the machine learning algorithms to forecast patient recruitment and quality events. So what's the outcome of that? The outcome of this operations analytics is that enrollment times dropped by 10 to 20%. The trial costs fell by 10 to 15%, and 5 times better at site selection process. So that's phenomenal, actually, the kind of result we have found, or the company have found by applying the analytics and AI. The third area that we will cover here is specific patient populations targeted more effectively. So we know which particular patient population to target and why that's important. It's important because one size doesn't fit all. And that's critical for when the different patients will respond differently to treatments within any disease or condition. So for even within the same disease, different patient will respond differently depending on their genes, depending on their body, and so what kind of data we collect for there. the electronic health records, the genomics, the molecular data, the insurance data, wearables and M-Health, social media and internet. We collect all the data to see what is the root cause of any kind of problem. And then this data are processed, integrated, and transformed into usable format. What we find is a kind of pattern recognition where the targeted medications for patients that share common features are given. And how do we get that thing? We do a lot of association mining. We do kind of pharmacogenomics, pharmacovigilance, predictive modeling, cohort querying, patient stratification, personalized medicine, and see that how we can create the specific patient populations target. So this is a kind of use case for specific patient populations target. Like with the data mining, a global pharmaceutical company has done some data mining with the electronic medical records, clinical trial, and genomic data to spot opportunities for drugs for specific patient populations. And what is the insight they have got out of data mining is identifying a small subset of lung cancer patients who had a specific genomic effect, a mutation in their ALK gene. And finally, from that insight, they developed a drug which is for lung cancer patients with the ALK gene mutation, which is approved by the FDA in 2011. So that's the beauty I was saying, that this analytics and AI not only helps in the laboratory, it goes into the mass and then it benefits them to a large extent. So that's the kind of quotation we can see from the doctor, that had this compound been tested against the broad spectrum of lung cancer patients, it likely would not have been found to be effective. With this analytics-based approach, it was found to be extremely effective. The fourth part is about better insight into patient behavior to improve drug delivery and effectiveness. So the patient behavior we can find from the provided EHI system data, the biosensors data, the smartwatches data, and the smartphones and conversational interfaces data. The AI engine compares the patient data with the other effective treatment pathways to nudge patient behavior on real-world evidence. So what happens here? We get the information from these remote sensor devices. We apply advanced analytics models to them. We find greater insight into existing patient behavior. And finally, that helps us in designing services targeted to different demographics or at-risk patient groups. So that's how the patient behavior, the insight into the patient behavior helps in drug delivery and effectiveness. So the challenge that has been found is that many patients forget to take their medicine at the required time. That's a pretty common challenge across the globe. And there is a kind of cloud-based mobile solution for that, to push messages directly to patients' mobile phone and reminding them to take their medication. The outcome is improved adherence to drug protocols. The fifth case that we have found is the improved safety and risk management. We get a lot of unstructured data from signals that come from a variety of sources, including the social media, Google searches, wearables, and can act as a warning signal for product safety issues. So the use case that we have figured out here is that the challenge to process increasing number of adverse event cases manually, it is inefficient and time consuming. So what does AI do for pharmacovigilance? Let me tell you what pharmacovigilance is. It is about reporting of the adverse drug effects, and that's a kind of mandatory by all the governments of the countries. So typically this was been done at past is about reading the research papers and manually been reported. Now this has been highly been automated through artificial intelligence. So we have got the smart system so that reads the text from the different reports, understands the human speech, extracts data from the documents, identify the adverse effect signals, and learns in real time. So that's that kind of smartness we're having in these machines. And the outcome is that they manage the case process with 50% less effort. It's more accurate, and we have got consistent AI data. The last part that we will discuss in this section is about the improved insight into marketing and sales performance that we found by dint of the application of AI and analytics. We found the new niche and underserved markets may be spotted by analyzing information from social media, demographics, electronic medical records, analyzing the effectiveness of sales efforts and capturing the feedback received by the sales force during client visits, and that helps in gaining the advantages, the competitive advantage. The use case that we have seen here is the outcomes are better understanding how often doctors are prescribing a given medication, tracking the effectiveness of the sales pitches, tracking competition, and understanding the performance of individual sales representatives. The other applications of this analytics and artificial intelligence in pharmaceutical industry includes the research and early development part, which includes the disease state and target understanding, the lead selection and optimization, the clinical dose endpoint selection, the therapeutic tailoring, and portfolio management. The expected ROI that we have seen in the research and early development is 10 to 20% in asset probability of product success or POS, and 5 to 10% overall portfolio POS. In the development, regulatory, and safety, we have found the implications in the protocol optimization, data adaptive development plans, trial planning and execution, portfolio management, active safety surveillance. The implications in terms of ROI are 15% faster enrollment, 10 to 15% reduction in trial costs, 5 to 10% in trial POS. In the manufacturing and supply chain, we have found end-to-end supply chain planning, which includes, of course, demand forecasting, the first thing, then is the yield optimization, procurement excellence, inventory optimization, network optimization, transportation planning, and quality monitoring. The results are 5 to 10% procurement savings, 10 to 20% better conversion cost, and 10 to 15% better cost of quality. The market access, commercial, and medical has these implications in field force effectiveness, gross to net optimization, commercial spend optimization, tailored customer engagement, understanding optimizing real world outcomes. The results are 5 to 10% net revenue improvement, 10 to 20% spend reduction, reallocation, 5 to 10% increase in persistency lifetime value. The enabling functions include the human capital, organizational health, forecasting excellence, enterprise risk management, and competitive intelligence. We have seen 50%, the massive number, 50% reduction in high-performing employee churn. So now we're the last section of our storyline, the parting thoughts. We will discuss about the future trends and the impact. So pharma marketers with the power of AI knows precisely what's relevant to doctor. They know what, where, and when to reach her to make the biggest impact on choice. We have seen the traditional predictive analytics models like Markov chain model, or there are multiple other algorithms as well that can predict a likelihood of a doctor to prescribe based on her most recent interaction with the brand. But now it is not just how or what the doctor is going to prescribe given the exposure to a particular advertisement or particular message. It is about learning the patterns of the digital engagement that lead to a script for a physician. And that is possible by dint of AI and reinforcement learning. So what are the key challenges? What are the key challenges that we face in the application of AI analytics in the pharmaceutical field? The first and foremost is the data quality. We get noisy patient level data. It is heterogeneity and lack of standards. That means there is a lot of variations within the data. Non-standard formats like structured discharge codes, laboratory measurements, free text narratives, and imaging data. Narrative is complex and with abbreviations specific to the domain or even individual practitioners. Errors in the recorded data, ambiguity in the recorded data, incomplete recombinant data, and systematic biases. So these are the data quality challenges that we see. The other challenge that we see is the interoperability and linked data. That means health data are scattered and fragmented among various EHR platforms, and their value critically depends on being able to integrate them. So that's a big challenge. And the other challenge, which is omnipresent, I would say, across all the sectors, are the privacy concerns, the consent from the patient parties, consent from the consumers, and de-identification of the data that one is collecting. So now what are the way outs to, or how we can mitigate these kind of challenges, how we can address these challenges? First, we need to integrate the siloed data and then leverage the power of the latest technological advancements. So it is not only about analytics and AI. In this webinar, we are discussing the analytics and AI only. In the next webinar, we are going to discuss the application of RPA, robotic process automation, in the pharmaceutical industry. So we will see that how beyond AI and analytics, even RPA can help in mitigating this problem. Another important or critical thing is converting big data into smart data. Big data does not necessarily give us the best results. Whether we have the right data or not, that we have to find out. And that gem is hidden within that big data only. So figuring out that gem in a smart way Of course, smart means application of analytics and AI will only come to figure out that, even to figure out the right data within the big data. So that part, we need to do it smartly. Analyzing the real world data from the real world settings. So real world data is very critical from a medical terms perspective. Analyze past and present clinical trials data and focus on success factors like technical feasibility, business sponsorship, and organizational change readiness. So these are the areas, if we can focus, we are sure that in the coming days, we can better leverage the potential and the power of analytics and AI. So with that, I'm closing this and signing up this presentation and open the floor for the questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tuhin. Thank you so much. So the first question which has come out is how to evaluate current condition for readiness for moving to industry 4.0. Current state readiness evaluation. Is there any assessment system so that the organization can be ready to start?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Is I think a very, very important question in the sense that we cannot just go and jump and start solving a problem. The first thing is that we need to track precisely what's the state of the art. And I believe that's not only true for pharmaceutical industry, that's true for most of the industries where we do the AI analytics consultancy. The first thing we do is to check the readiness in the sense whether the data exists or not. Of course, data exists, but is the data complete or not? Some data are, exist, but there are a lot of missing data. So how messy the data is, how scattered the data is. So what we emphasize is that, do you have a data governance in place? I always say that even before any kind of data analytics come into play, the most important thing is the data governance part. So I think that's the kind of prerequisite for any successful implementation of analytics and AI, because in analytics, it is about garbage in, garbage out. If you don't give the right data to the algorithm, it will not give you the right solution, even if the machine is absolutely powerful to give the recommendation, but you have to give the right input. So it's the organizational challenge, it's the industry challenge to give the right data. And as you'd ask that, is there a way? Yes, there is a way. There are checklists which ask the precise question on every verticals of an organization, of every functional areas across the horizon in the organization, which has got a very detailed checklist to see that whether the organization is ready or not. So yes, the checklists do exist. That's the answer.
Fantastic. So yes, there is a checklist which exists, and that can be used across. And if you like, we can conduct another session to discuss that and kind of share it with you so that you can do it, or Dr. Tuhin and team, including myself, can help you do it for individual. If you have a requirement like that, feel free to reach out to us. Okay. Now, the second question is, what is the minimum infrastructure required in terms of equipment capability and server management to go to Industry 4.0?
Mr. Basu, would you like to take this question?
Sure, I can take a stab at it. It's not really, I mean, in this day and age of cloud, I think infrastructure is probably not a concern as long as you have the money. And yes, these are probably very computation intensive, resource intensive calculations, but like it's very important to try to understand, as Surin alluded to just a few minutes back, is like, what is the data that is available? If there is no good data to start with, I don't think this goes forward. So not exactly like physical infrastructure, but like more of knowledge infrastructure is the currency here.
Okay. So thank you, Mr. Basu. So if I have to, kind of summarize it, the thing is that if you're asking about physical infra or, equipment, server what is the cost of that? That wouldn't be too much because it can be done on the cloud. But what's important is that the people who are doing this have the right amount of knowledge to process that data. Right, Mr. Basu? It's a knowledge, more of a knowledge way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be infrastructure. It's not going to be cheap, but like the knowledge factor is more expensive.
Okay, sure. So the next question is forecasting in pharma industry with respect to production expected of the medicine or in terms of cure for a specific ailment?
Mr. Basu, would you like to take this?
Sure. So like it again starts with the use case that we are looking at, like the example that Tuhin was talking about. That one was something, I think it was partnered with IBM, and like there were some, so I think in the last 2 decades, there were over 50 clinical trials that was done for ALS, and like none of them showed any positive results. And the one that IBM partnered and they had the positive result that we talked about is like, uh, it's more of the use case again. Like that was a very specific use case of trying to find a cure for a very particular problem. So
Right.
there are other cases like currently with the COVID-19 scenario, like there have been a lot of papers coming up and people trying to find out what might work. So that is kind of more of what we would call a mobbing kind of thing, where everyone's going through papers and trying to find out if there is a way forward.
Okay. I think one part of the question is that suppose, and quite a few of the attendees are part of the manufacturing in the manufacturing field. So can we forecast the production to the, based on seasonality, or you have a certain, illnesses which happen? Or can we do forecasting based on past data to kind of put it back into production to have right in time the number of the medicines or whatever you call it on the shelves
Yeah,
is kind.
I think that is already being done. Like that is already being done today. Like until and unless something new comes up, and like the current situation is a good reflection of where we are. We have optimized our systems in a way that like we will have certain it's not just medications. The entire industry is optimized to generate certain things at a certain period of time. So like all our global supply chains and manufacturing is facing the same problem today, because that like we have optimized it to bring down costs. And like if you like at the beginning of flu season, you will have a lot of flu shots available in the market, manufactured for a particular period of time. But like now the industry uses the infrastructure to do something else. So yes, that is already happening today. Like it's not just in the field of medical equipments and medications. It's optimized for all industries.
Fabulous. So the answer is yes, it is absolutely possible, and it is being done is the answer, to be honest.
Yeah. The only problem is like when we end up in a situation where something happens which nobody predicted, that can be very,
yes.
all of us are seeing now.
Yes, I agree with you. The point is that it is already done. Just in case you want it done for your particular organization or department, wherever you're working, as for a specific use case, we can definitely help you do that. Just in case you're looking for something on those lines. We're already doing that, and as Mr. Basu said, it's an industry practice, so it is definitely replicable with you. Okay. So what is siloed data is the next question.
Okay. Let me start this, and then perhaps Sudhakar and Mr. Basu, all of you can join in because you have all experienced this thing. So when we say siloed data, it means that say, for example, in any bank, there are different departments, or any organization for that matter, there are multiple departments. and every department has their own data, and this compartmentalized data, that's another way of putting the siloed data. Compartmentalized data don't talk with each other. There is no one version of the truth of the entire organization, because there are multiple ways the data are scattered across the organization. So that's the experience of siloed. So what happens is that in such scenario, whenever we go for a kind of consultancy with any department, but we require the visibility of the data of other departments. So we also connect with multiple departments, get the data, integrate all the data into the right database. Again, given the nature of data, if it's unstructured data, we go for MongoDB like that. And then and at the last stage comes the analytics engine. Analytics modeling comes at a very last stage. But prior to that, getting the data, getting the right data for the model development from the organization's multiple departments is the key challenge. So yeah, Sudhakar and Mr. Basu, you can add to it.
Mr. Basu, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the challenges, and like Tajin alluded to in one of the slides, is like these are healthcare data, so this is very sensitive. Like most of the places, like PHI data is one of the information that every company needs to protect by law, and like there are multiple laws, like every company that deals with drug or healthcare data has to comply with HIPAA, which is one of the most stringent guidelines that the governments have. So there are challenges there, like interoperability of EHR is a field that like a lot of people have invested in. Like earlier there was a standard called HL7, and these days Google is one of the major players who are starting with an initiative called FHIR, Fast Healthcare Interoperable Resources. So there are a lot of things that are happening, but there are rules and regulations which kind of makes it very difficult to kind of break these silos as well. So the entire world is moving, and again, like nobody has the entire patient's data. So the entire world is trying to come together in a way where we can breach these silos.
Exactly. I mean, I completely agree with you. Siloed data, as in this data exists, but is only known to a few people or a team of people or a department, and it is not shared, or the interpretation is not, analysis is not done on that. The data is hidden when compared to the complete organization. So when people are trying to do analytics, this data does not pop up, and that's a huge challenge. So any data which is generated in the organization should be shared, or at least everybody should know in the organization that this kind of data can be extracted and this data exists within the system for people to analyze. Okay, so I'm coming from a data perspective, not from a pharma background. So I'm coming from that data sharing is one across the industries. It's a problem. Okay. So the next question is type of manufacturing industry where data science can be applied.
Well, let me take it, and then of course, if Sudhakar or Mr. Basu feel there is a need for them to throw some more light to it, you can always participate. So types of manufacturing industry where data science can be applied is actually everywhere. In the automobile industry, we do it. In most of the manufacturing industries, what we do is a kind of uh, how we can manage the quality first, how we can predict the failure. That's a very important part, which goes for the preventive maintenance. Uh, I can't think of any manufacturing industry where data science analytics is not applied. That's what my experience is. So uh, it can be in the thermal power industry or in the automotive, or where not actually. So everywhere analytics and AI goes there. And I mentioned in the beginning about the IoT part or the IIoT part, especially in the IoT or IIoT part, where the Internet of Things or the industrial Internet of Things, the after the advent of the sensor data, uh, that particular opportunity becomes increased multifold. So recently we completed a project for a shipping analytics company. Again, they are the manufacturer of ships, by the way. And we have got their different kinds of data, from the boiler temperature to the different engine specifications of their data. And as I started in the introductory slides, I made mentioned about something called the age analytics part, or the age AI part. That's where the future is lying. So there was a time, means currently also, we try to upload all the data to the cloud, and then the entire infrastructure, the ecosystem of analytics goes to the cloud, and then insight gets generated. But with the advent of this age AI, we subsequently try to distribute the entire analytics and the AI to the place of operations. That means one need not go through the uploading of the sensitive data, and sometimes it is unstructured and becomes a rigorous task. So that can be bypassed. And to answer your question precisely, yes, in all industries it has its applications. Maybe we can do one session or one webinar together where we can show you that how across all the industries, maybe a couple of slides for each industry I can walk you through, how across all the manufacturing industries analytics and AI have their key role to play.
Sure. Twinji, if you could just elaborate on one specific example, any one specific example you worked in the last
Sure.
year or so, that would be really helpful.
Sure. So as I was discussing about the shipping analytics part, and that is a kind of part of our maritime industry, and they are manufacturing the ships. Now, the performance of the ships, of course, depend on how the engine operates. There are several other variables that go into the process. So, our point of concern was the engine performance of the ships. So, we took almost a few thousand data points were there. A few thousand data points were there, which were trying to predict a couple of things. Number one, because this lost time, what they technically call, amounts to huge dollar value for any shipping industry. And this ship, I was talking about the cargo ships, not the ships that take the people around. So if the ship doesn't operate, that's a kind of huge loss. So we figured out that what are the key performance indicators that leave an impact on the performance of the engine. So and that helped. The beauty is that it's not a kind of intellectual exercise. When such model was applied actually to the industry, that helped in reducing or curbing a few $1 million of value. So that's the kind of use case we have done. The other thing is about in that same maritime industry, but for a different company, we have done the preventive maintenance. So again, we started the engine data. We applied a couple of models like Markov chain model. To be more precise, it is MCMC, like Markov chain Monte Carlo. And the second one we applied was the Bayesian network, where not only about from one state to the other state the prediction was possible, but from a long or a multiple chains or sequence of events we could predict the final step. So we could figure out from the study of the behavior of the different machine parts, that what can go wrong for the machine in the next 7 days, in the next month. So that helped again saving a lot of dollars for the organization. So these are the couple of use cases in the maritime manufacturing industry I could think of at the moment.
Sounds good, Twinji. The next question is, one of the important aspects of manufacturing industry is continuous operation. How does AI contribute in monitoring equipment health, which can be helpful for reducing major breakdown cost? I think that's a perfect,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
I partly answered this question when I mentioned about the sensor data. So yes,
Yeah.
the sensor data gives us a lot of insight about how the equipments are manufactured, how the equipments behave, and what are the longevity of the equipments, whether there is a tendency, or whether they are prone to failure at what point of time. So at first, it is not something new, by the way. I must say that even before the advent of IoT, we used to do those things in our good old statistical days. We used to do something called survival analysis. Survival analysis is something typically for the healthcare industry, how long a patient can survive. But then we took that particular tool and technique for this manufacturing industry, and we started predicting like how long a machine or a machine part can survive. So it's a kind of hazard time we can predict, and that helped us in preventive maintenance. But things have changed drastically after the advent of IoT and IIoT. Now we have got the sensor data. It is not about the final outcome or final production of a machine, but every part of the machine we can understand what is the quality. Whether so quality again is a separate discussion altogether. And Sudhakar, you can always contribute here. So of course there are two levels to it. Number one is that whether the performance or the quality of this or the performance of the machine falls into the plus minus 3 SD or not, the standard deviation or not. That is one part of the thing. The second part is that how does it is not in isolation, but how do all the components behave together and helps in the final production. So second by second, even a microsecond performance gets measured by the sensor data, and it is not that analytics models need to run say quarterly or monthly, nothing like that. The alert systems have been generated. So even if there is any kind of anomaly, we call it technically anomaly detection algorithms. So whenever there is any anomaly, be it in the micro level, that means at the part level, or at the macro level, that means the entire system level, which is a congregation of multiple parts, the anomaly detection algorithms pops up and alert system gets generated. And in an automated way, the prescriptive action gets done. So to answer your question, at every step of the continuous improvement part, the precision, that's a very important aspect, precision and reliability for any manufacturing industry. Yes, AI analytics helps to achieve the precision and reliability to a large extent. So that you can also throw some light on your quality part of
Absolutely, absolutely, you nailed it. I mean, not much to add, but I have more experience in the IoT part, where we have sensors now, which kind of not only monitor. Earlier, it was used only for the location. Now, these sensors, figure out the moisture, the temperature, the complete well-being of that particular equipment. So we use that, especially in maintenance, and that is fed into an AI system which forecasts, if there is going to be a breakdown in the near future for people to work upon. So it's a continuous, completely automated system. Um, a great question, Sashank. What I'll do is I'll share that use case with you and the team after this. Okay. So the next question is, based on your experience, where is AI more beneficial? One, in manufacturing plant, or two, the support functions, line, supply chain, and new product development. How do we assess the impact of regulatory agencies while implementing AI?
Okay, I think Sudhakar, in the interest of time, that should be the last question to take, and then we have to close.
Sure.
Only 3 minutes left.
Sure.
So it is not about, it is, let me answer this question in a different way. It is not about where it is more beneficial, rather the right perspective here. Of course, this perspective is subjective. Every and all other different perspectives are equally respected. The important perspective here is that how rightly AI and analytics are being implemented. That's the more important. It's not about where it will give more benefit, uh, rather I would say that if it is been implemented rightly, it would give the benefit in most of the cases. It is not a kind of comparison about where it is more or where it is less. Say for example, the clustering part that we have discussed just in the uh, pharmaceutical exercise here, where we are clustering the different diseases or clustering the different patients. The same clustering can be done in a market segmentation for an FMCG company. Now, can I answer that whether it is more beneficial in FMCG and less beneficial in pharmaceutical? Not like that. But the right way is that has it been implemented in the best possible way? That's the more important thing one should look at. That is my perspective, and other perspectives equally welcome here. Now, number two is about the regulatory part and how AI can help or survive, ensuring that it doesn't breach any of the regulations. So that's definitely an important part, and I believe it's not as difficult as it looks if this if part is very important, if we behave ethically, as long as the right consent is been taken, and we don't try to breach the privacy of any of the individuals. Regulatory bodies, of course, we have to respect, we have to go through each of them, but this is a kind of general guideline. I can say that yes, ethics ultimately lie with us. If we have to just, follow our basic principles and basic protocols, the moral values, then most of the laws concerning the regulatory bodies can be abided by. But yes, Mr. Basu and Sudhakar, you can also throw your insight and enlighten the audience.
I think you nailed it. So I think we have time for one last question.
Okay.
How is machine learning changing commercial aspects of pharma field force sizing, HCP engagement, etc.?
Would you mind repeating the question?
How is machine learning
Yeah.
changing commercial aspects of pharma,
Yeah,
like field force sizing, HCP engagement, etc.?
absolutely. So as I discussed about the sales force effectiveness, now if we can very well know, say, what is machine learning, let's understand in a very, very basic way, I would say, is that the machine learns by itself from its past data and then predicts the future from its past understanding. That's a very, simplistic understanding of machine learning. So as far as the field agents are concerned, if we understand that where the effectiveness is more by which kind of people for what kind of product at what point of time, if we can keep all this information the part of an algorithm, then definitely that would be easier to generate the right marketing effectiveness and sales effectiveness for the pharmaceutical field agents. So again, the concerned person who has asked this question can contact me if interested. We have got number of use cases on this part, and it would be my pleasure to walk him or her through it.
Sure. Mr. Basu, can you share a use case? I'm sure you're using machine learning. If you have any specific use case within CBS where you're using machine learning?
So we use in a lot of places, but like I am not sure if I'm allowed to really go into depths of that, unfortunately. But yeah, I will work with Tuhin and probably share something which we can share with the audience.
Sure. So thank you so much, Dr. Tuhin. Thank you so much, Mr. Basu. I hope, and for all the attendees who have joined the meeting, thank you so much for taking time out. I hope it's been a very knowledgeable, knowledge sharing session. We'll be having another session next week on specifically automation or intelligent process automation. I'll share that meeting request with you. We'll have the panel explaining how automation is helping organizations going to the industry 4.0. So thank you so much. I have all your questions. I'm going to put them in a mail, get the answers from Mr. Basu and Dr. Tuhin, and respond to it. And as some of you requested, we will definitely share the PowerPoint and the link to the recording. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Tuhin. Thank you,
Thank you so
Mr.
much,
Basu. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Mr.
much.
Basu. Thanks all the audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
You guys have a great day. Take care.